It might sound like twisted logic, but military forces everywhere argue the greater the firepower they possess, the greater the chance of maintaining peace. In other words, massive weaponry is the best deterrent to war. Right now, that theory is being tested like never before, and much of it is happening in Australia's backyard. The United States wants the world, and particularly China, to know of its increasing presence in the Indo-Pacific. And, as you're about to see, its military in full flight puts on a spectacular show.
I hope that war doesn't come, but if it comes, we're going to do our part.
It's as hot as hell and just as humid. But the thing that really strikes you is the noise. It's deafening and dangerous. We've got front row seats to a gruelling military operation playing out in one of the most fiercely contested regions in the world. Seeing lethal weapons up close is at first confronting, but as we quickly learn, these war games are deadly serious.
You picked the hot spot around the globe today. We need to be hard in our training.
Major General Brian Gibson is the top US brass in charge of air and missile defence for the entire Asia-Pacific region. He knows that any day now, these practice runs could become the real deal.
China and North Korea fired the most number of missiles they've ever fired last year. So certainly, the environment's different than it was just a few short years ago. But my responsibility and our responsibility, regardless of that, is to be ready.
It's a big responsibility. Does it weigh on you?
Certainly. I think if it didn't, I shouldn't be doing this job. Sure, the world's a dangerous place. Our mission is to be prepared.
To find out how, we're headed into the middle of a territorial dispute, which is threatening peace in the Indo-Pacific. Basa Air Base in the northwest Philippines was built by the US Army before World War II. It's now the training headquarters for fighter pilots, the Philippines' version of Top Gun. Here, we board an MV-22 Osprey, which looks like a giant transformer. The workhorse of the US Marine Corps, it flies twice as fast and 5 times further than other helicopters. It's a breathtaking flight, high above the most disputed waters on Earth.
We have weapon systems designed in the United States and operated by Army soldiers in this theater that they need to be ready. And none of us have a lock on what tomorrow is going to bring, but we do have a lock on what we can do today.
The South China Sea is home to shipping routes which support close to a third of the world's maritime trade, more than half of the world's fishing boats, and valuable oil and gas reserves. Right in the middle of a chain of islands crucial to maintaining democracy in the region lies Taiwan. Gaining control of Taiwan is key for China to unlock the entire Pacific. Beijing has already built several artificial islands nearby, fortifying them with airstrips and weapon systems, and recently sending warships and aircraft into the Taiwan Strait.
I think China's actions stand on their own for what they do in the near abroad, so we need to be prepared to a range of potential adversaries, whether that's China, whether that's North Korea, whether that's Russia, whether that's somebody today we can't predict and we don't know.
45 minutes off the coast of the Philippines, we spot the USS Makin Island. It looks like an aircraft carrier, but it does so much more. An amphibious assault ship from which military commanders launch missions, not just in the air, but also by sea.
Our primary mission for this ship is to embark, deploy, and put Marines ashore. We'll come to 260 to 3 knots and then launch them as slow as possible, okay?
Yes, sir.
With 3,500 troops and more than 20 aircraft on board, Captain Tony Chavez says managing the warship is a carefully choreographed dance. How challenging is it to run an operation like this?
It's like running a big city. First of all, I get to work with some of the most amazing men and women that the U.S. has to offer. These young men and women are placed in some of the most stressful and dangerous situations.
It's a hard slog, and below deck, the rituals of daily life play out in extremely confined spaces. Conditions are tough, the humidity impossible to escape, and there's rarely a break in the traffic. What is that we're hearing?
That's actually a helicopter landing.
Right.
Or turning up. Hey, is that an LCAC coming in, or is that an aircraft spinning on deck? 53 is landing right now.
How often do you have planes taking off and landing on missions?
Sure, it's better to ask when we don't have planes taking off and landing. So we fly probably 6 days a week. We try to incorporate one maintenance day, but the aircraft are pretty much, we have a flight schedule operating every day.
There's something utterly mesmerising about the F-35 jet. The sound, the heat and the power put this supersonic stealth fighter in a league of its own. Colonel, these are some very impressive machines you're in charge of.
Yes, ma'am. So we have 10 F-35s and we have 10 MV-22s. It's the first time that configuration has ever deployed. We're working really hard to show value for our crisis response mission here in the theater. So I have all the Marines that are on the ship.
As commanding officer of the 13th Marine Expeditionary Unit, Colonel Samuel Meyer oversees all air operations off the Makin Island. He's eager to show off this stunning lineup of the military's most powerful toys. Do you and your pilots feel you are prepared to put these operations to a test in a real combat situation?
Quite simply, yes, we're ready.
2-4, bridge copy. I was maintaining our course and speed, and then we will turn around.
Every command, every manoeuvre is being fine-tuned on this vast blue stage, where China has proven to be a bad actor, playing a long game of intimidating Pacific nations. But the US and its allies aren't having it, bolstering their defences, and it's an impressive display. What message do you think all this is sending to Beijing?
I don't know. We're about making sure that our soldiers can send that message if they have to. None of us do this alone. The real power in what we do is doing it together. Doing it together, armies to armies, air forces to air forces, navies to navies, Coast Guard to Coast Guard. So what does that send to the Chinese and the PRC? I hope what they see is a commitment.
It's quite extraordinary to be standing on an enormous floating runway in the middle of the South China Sea. And America's presence here is currently bigger and stronger than it's ever been outside of wartime. And China is not happy about it. Beijing is warning this US show of force will only create more tensions, endangering peace and stability in the region.
If we maintain status quo, I'm sure there will be peace in Taiwan and no need to do any exercise.
When you say if the status quo is maintained, everything will be okay, there'll be peace, And that sounds like a threat.
1, 2, 3.
This is the last resort in ground warfare.
45 left and 45 right.
American and Filipino troops in their late teens and early 20s are learning the tricks of hand-to-hand combat at a military base in the Philippines jungle. The last time these skills were used in these parts was against the Japanese in World War II. More than 70 years later, the US and the Philippines are undertaking the biggest joint war games ever, in the face of China's growing assertiveness with claims to Taiwan and parts of the South China Sea. The Philippines was once home to America's largest overseas naval base here in Subic Bay. It closed down more than 30 years ago, and this area became a pretty run-down coastal resort town. But it's now a key strategic foothold, right on the edge of the South China Sea and just a half-hour flight to Taiwan. So, the Americans are coming back. And they've invited an important ally, more than 100 of Australia's finest soldiers. It's an extraordinary exercise to watch it all unfold. What is it like to be a part of it?
It's excellent. It's good, realistic training, coming out here and having the capabilities together to work together, to get to know each other, to build those relationships.
The complex and the threatening environment that we face is now, which is why it's so important that we are preparing as quickly as we can for a posture which does advance our national interest. And that is around contributing to the collective security of our region, contributing to the maintenance of the global rules-based order, the rules of the road within our region.
How best to do that has consumed Australia's Defence Minister, Richard Marles, in his first year in government. Australians have got a fair bit to worry about at the moment. Why should what's happening in the Indo-Pacific be front of mind?
We're seeing the biggest conventional military build-up in the world since the end of the Second World War. That doesn't happen for no reason. And it does have an impact on our strategic landscape.
It's fuelled the AUKUS Pact, Australia's biggest ever defence deal, partnering with America and the UK to buy and build nuclear submarines. And the commissioning of a strategic review of the Australian Defence Force, which, it turns out, is not ready for war.
We do need to change our posture. You know, the posture that we've had has served us well over many decades, but it's not fit for purpose now, and we've got no time to waste.
Well, there's so much talk and concern about a war with China and an invasion of Taiwan. I mean, how real is that threat? How imminent is it?
I don't want to speculate about that, and I don't think it helps for someone in my position to walk down that path. I think conflict is not inevitable, and I think we can provide for pathways to a peaceful resolution of competition within our region.
Rocket!
But Australia's posturing has not been well received in Beijing.
Australia is so far away. It's booming there with trading China. I mean, we can always enjoy good relations. So why should Australia involved on AUKUS, on Quad, on all those all those unnecessary build-up that's supposed to contain China?
Henry Wahao Wang is the founder of influential think tank, the Centre for China and Globalisation in Beijing. A former advisor to the Chinese Communist Party, he's incredulous that Australia would dare to provoke its largest trading partner.
You are so far away from China, and we have only economic benefits. China is the largest source of tourism to Australia. I just tasted Australian wine the other day with Australian delegation in Beijing. You have so many good, complementary role to play with China.
To be fair, China has also executed economic coercion against Australia and other countries.
No, I'm not, in agreement on that. I don't think that is really the case because there could be some misunderstanding. I mean, Australia is always a peace-loving country and has never had a war with anybody, basically. So why should Australia be now the front-running forces now to contain China, to build up the military? Nuclear submarines aim at any country, I don't know, but it's not necessary. Nobody wants to see more military build up. I mean, no matter where they are.
But the PRC are building up the military. They've undergone the biggest military build-up really since the end of World War II in the Indo-Pacific.
No, I don't think so because the PRA has the budget is less than all the Western countries, which normally is about 2%. China has not built up any large military. Whatever China is doing is within its national boundary or historically recognized, territory or waters. And then even Taiwan is an internal matter of China. I mean, China always pursue a peaceful reunification.
Hearing Henry Wang rewrite history is a fairly startling insight into how China views its position as the victim, forced to retaliate to keep the so-called peace. China describes Australia's involvement in these war games as unnecessary, antagonistic. It says we're being provocative. What's your response to that?
Well, what we're doing is really working with friends, partners for the collective security of our region. And we're doing that because we understand that the defence of Australia doesn't really mean that much unless we have the collective security of the Indo-Pacific.
Our American allies are in the region to stay, signing a new defence deal with the Philippines. US troops will have access to 4 additional military bases facing north towards Taiwan, giving them a front row seat to monitor China, which has only further agitated Beijing.
Again, I say that is unnecessary because, China is a peace-loving country. They never colonized any place, never invaded any country.
It was quite clear to us that America, the Philippines, Australia are preparing for a potential war, perhaps an invasion of Taiwan. Do you see that as inevitable?
If we maintain status quo, stick to the principle that all countries establish ties with China, that there's only one China, Taiwan is part of China, and there's no official ties, I'm sure there will be peace in Taiwan and no need to do any exercise.
And that sounds like a threat. What if the status quo is not maintained?
That's what I'm saying. We want to maintain status quo. I don't know who else wants to disrupt that status quo. So you see, China is always in the defensive mode and is a responding mode.
While Henry Wang and I can politely agree to disagree, it's a different story out here. The South China Sea is teeming with military craft and weapon systems. And with so much at stake, no one is backing down. There's a sense that even a minor misunderstanding or miscommunication between communist China and the US and Australian-led allies could light the fuse at any moment. What keeps you up at night? What is the most stressful and worrying thing for you in these deeply troubled times?
I think managing Australia's interests through this period where we are seeing great power contest is, hugely consequential, and getting that right will have a massive impact on the future of our country, on the prosperity of Australians. And yeah, there are times in the early hours where I find myself awake thinking about that.
Hello, I'm Amelia Adams. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for our brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.